There is in Masechet Rosh Hashana, Daf Tet Zayin, there's a Mishnah that we're going to learn tonight. Ba'arba'a perakim ha'olam nidon. 4 times a year, the world gets judged. Ba'pesach ala tevu'ah. On Pesach, God judges the world for any of the wheat and the crops that are going to grow. Ba'atzeret al perot ha'ilan. Berosh Hashana kol ba'e olam ovrim lefanav kibnei maron. And on Rosh Hashana, all human beings are going to be judged like sheep. Kibnei maron. Why sheep? Because when a shepherd has sheep and he wants to count them, he will make a gate where each one of the sheep goes in and he'll mark them. So what's the saying here, and then we'll finish it up. And kibnei maron, shne'emar he'otzeh lachad libam hamevin el kol ma'asem ubechad nidonim al hamayim. And on Sukkot, God rules the world on water. So different times of the year, God judges different things. Rosh Hashanah happens to be He judges mankind. Kol ba'e olam. Meaning anyone who came to this world, he gets judged on Rosh Hashanah. Now why like sheep? I told you because the sheep go in one by one. Sometimes the person might think on Rosh Hashanah, God's judging the world, He's judging the city, He's not judging, no. He's judging each and every individual based on their actions. Let's continue. And what the focus of Rosh Hashanah is going to be in the next few days is that we have to truly know and believe that God knows everything that's happening to us in our life. He knows every detail, even the things that we do privately, without anybody looking, without anybody around. He's aware of them. He knows what's going on, and He even knows our thoughts. In the Pirkei Avot, it tells us, Ayin ro'ah ve'ozen shoma'at. That one day when God at the end of our life is going to show us everything, we're going to see how He saw everything and He heard everything, every conversation that we had. In the Shulchan Aruch, on the first page of the halakha, the Shulchan Aruch is the halakha for all of Am Yisrael. Ashkenazim, Sfaradim, Hasidim, we all accepted this one book of Shulchan Aruch. And on the first page it says, yes, but it's based itself on the Shulchan Aruch, on the basis. And it starts on the first page, Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, a pasuk from Tehillim from David HaMelech, that the highest level of righteousness of a person is when he truly believes that God is always watching. That's why they say on Rabbi Ishmael Kohen Gadol, his mother had many children that became Kohanim Gedolim. And one of the reasons they say is that she was modest in her house when she was alone. You know, sometimes when we're at home, we're not as modest. We do things a little bit different. No one's looking, it's saying. She had many children who got to very high levels in Yahadut and in Am Yisrael on just one very simple thing. She was modest even when she was alone. Even when she was in her house, very private. And it's a very big ma'ala in life to have that privacy. And the tzidkut of a person, a righteous person, is a person who truly believes and knows that God is watching him in every single thing that he does, even if he's alone and even if other people are not there. The Nefesh HaChaim, it's a book that was written of Rav Chaim Volozhin. Rav Chaim Volozhin lived from 1749 until 1821. He was a student of the Gaon of Vilna. The Gaon of Vilna was a rabbi who lived in Lithuania, in Vilna, and Rav Chaim Volozhin was one of his main students. He opened the yeshiva of Chaim Volozhin. I brought a picture of the yeshiva. It's right here. It's called the Yeshiva of Volozhin. Right. This was in, I think at the time it was Russia when it was there. It was called Yeshivat Et Hayim. He opened it in 1803 until 1892. And this was the mother of all the Lithuanian yeshivot. What do I mean? If you ask many Sfaradim in the Sfaradi countries, we didn't follow the system of what the yeshivot are today, where they learn a lot of Gemara and Mishnah. First, they had a different system of learning Torah, Nevi'im, Ketubim. They learned Targum, and they had a different system of ages. But all the yeshivot that are pretty much around today, many of them follow the yeshiva of Rav Chaim Volozhin that he opened. And many of the biggest yeshivot that exist today, Slobodka, Mir, Panovich, Kelm, Kletz, the Telz Yeshiva, they all follow the system that he put together of this individual. And he wrote a book, Nefesh HaChaim. Before we go into what he said in the book, I want you to understand the history of who he was. He started the yeshiva with 10 students. He didn't have money. So he sold his wife's jewelry. His wife agreed to sell the jewelry to open up the yeshiva. And before he had passed away, he had seen, they built a whole structure. He had over 100 students learning in the yeshiva. He had a brother called Zalman. Zalman was the #1 student of the Gaon of Vilna. The Gaon of Vilna was a tremendous Gaon. You know, today, they use the term Gaon very freely. You know, anytime there's a Gaon. But the Gaon of Vilna, who was really they say his knowledge was so big, his aptitude in learning the Torah, that he was like a Ge'on from the time of the Ge'onim. Let me give you an example. There was one time a student that came to him that was very excited that he learned some Gemara. And he went to the rabbi and he told the rabbi, I want you to test me. So the rabbi said, okay, you sure? Go review and come back. He goes, no, I reviewed it. He goes, just review it again. He came back after a few weeks, said, I'm ready. He said, okay, close the book. Close the book. He told him, how many times does Rav and Shmuel argue in the Masechet? The guy said, I don't know. And it goes to show you the gadlut of the Gaon. The Gaon, he counted how many arguments. You know, a lot of times we learn the Gemara, you know, we learn it, we read it, we get the point, we understand it. He was at a level, he counted how many times they were arguing with each other to show you the highest level. For example, when he would say the Ashrei Yosher Betecha, he was able to say both front words and backwards. The words because he had a genius mind. Now, and we don't say that he was born with this, because if we say that he's born with it, then we say it was just a gift, and then we're not capable of it. He had certainly some talents and traits, but he worked on himself to get to the level of what he was. And interestingly enough, I made a little bit of a chart here so you guys can take a look. So we had Rav Chaim Volozhin, and he had a brother Zalman. Rav Chaim had a son Yitzhak, who took over the yeshiva when he had passed away, Rav Chaim Volozhin. And he had a daughter, Rivka, and he had another daughter. One of the daughters married the Netziv of Volozhin. Here is the Netziv of Volozhin. Take a look. See a picture of him? Netziv stands for Naftali, Tzvi, Yehuda, Berlin. That was his name. You can see him right here. And he had a son, Rav Chaim Berlin. He was the chief rabbi of Moscow. They opened the yeshiva in Brooklyn called Chaim Berlin after this rabbi's name. They're big Ge'onim. Now, what I want to tell you also is that the great grandson of Rav Chaim Volozhin was Shimon Peres. He traced himself back. You know, and a lot of times, you know, we see dignitaries, Jewish dignitaries around the world, and you wonder, like, you know, what was the zechut? They had very, very holy ancestors before. You know, a lot of times, we spoke about this when we were in this class. The fact that you're alive today and you're Jewish, and you understand and recognize that you are Jewish, in and of itself is a miracle. How many people fell off the sides over the many, many years? You're finally in America or in Israel, wherever you are, and finally you're from the few. You're from the you know, after being sifted in the flour. It's the finest of humanity that we are today. And, you know, we think ourselves very small. I'm going to show you today from today's lesson that we actually are very, very big. And I'm going to show you the value of what we are. You know, so this rabbi, Rav Chaim Volozhin, has a book called Nefesh Hayim. And in the book, he says that we are all created in the Tzelem Elohim. Tzelem. Tzelem, you know, they sometimes say Tzelem is like a statue. But that's in the modern day Hebrew. What's Tzelem Elohim? We already know that it says from Harambam, there's 13 Ikarim. The 13 Ikarim are the basis of what our religion is. You know, if you tell someone what makes you Jewish today, for a man, okay, he has a Brit Milah, okay, fine. For a lady, she doesn't have it. So what is it what's the form of what a Jew is? What do you believe in? So there's 13 Ikarim. One of the Ikarim is that we believe is that God has no form. En lo demut ve'en lo demut haguf. That's one of our beliefs, that God does not have any type of physical form of any kind. So when it says that we are created in Tzelem Elohim, what does that mean? Do you understand where we're coming with this? What's Tzelem Elohim mean? So what's more interesting is that if you look at the pasuk originally in Bereshit, it says Na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu kidmotenu. What happened when God asked the Malachim, should we do it? He said, we're going to make man betzalmenu kidmotenu. So he used two words, tzelem and demut. And we already said that God's not physical, so what do we have that's godlike? You see, what is it that we are, because it's not physical, it's not, God doesn't have eyes like we have, He doesn't have a nose or a mouth or any physical body, so what is it that we're godlike? In what way? And in Tehillim, if you look at Tehillim Kuf Bet, it says, Dimiti leke'at medaber. So David HaMelech says, I am like the ka'at is the bird that speaks. So damiti, I'm similar, like domem, like he's domem. He's similar to it. So how is he domeh to it? Was David HaMelech saying I'm like a bird? He was saying no. Just like a bird can sing, I have the ability to do similar things that way. So when we say Tzelem Elohim, that we are like God, doesn't mean that I am physically like God, but I can do something like that God can do. And we're going to see what we're going to, in a way. So I have some common denominator with God in my Tzelem Elohim. Let's continue. So we know that the demut is not physical. So what's the common denominator that we have? Is that we obviously have a certain midah, a trait that we have within us that is similar to what God has. You know, God has an ability. God is the Almighty. He's very powerful. He's the creator of the world. He maintains the world. But it also says Tzelem Elohim. Elohim is from the word judgment. You know, they always say Havaya, Yud Kei Vav Kei is Rahamim, and Elohim means of judgment. So just like God can be in a judgment way, human beings also can destroy. They have a power of destruction. The same way human beings can build, they can destroy. And I'm not only talking about physical. You know, you can see a guy can go build a building, he can go build a car, he can come up with new technologies and create machines and things that are even bigger than him. But there's something else that we have that's godlike.
So it's collect everyone, Jewish and not.
And John Jewish, for sure. Tzelem Elohim is inclusive of even Goyim. Listen, you know, a lot of people wonder, you know, that's only supposed to be some one religion. No, God created the Goyim for a reason, for a purpose, and that each one of us has a reason. In probably the coming weeks, we're going to talk a little bit on the psychology of what's the value of each and every one of us. But I'll go in a short part we're going to talk about, because I've been preparing for the last 3 weeks. It's more of a psychology class that ties in to something Rav Shlomo Volver spoke about in Israel. You know, we come into this world, and this is a mashal. Imagine there's two people in a car, and Has v'Shalom, they get into a car accident, and they come in, they get them out of the car, and they're in a coma. They take them out, they bring them to a hospital, and they put them in 2 hospital beds in the same room. After a few weeks, the doctor is checking up on them, a lot of machinery, mechanical stuff, all different things, checking the heart rate, the pulse. But they see they're not talking, they don't open their eyes. Suddenly, they both open their eyes the same day. And they start talking. And one says, oh, I'm awake. Wow. So the doctor says, I don't believe it. It's been a few months. The guy was in a coma, finally woke up. So he says, where am I? He says, in a hospital. He says, listen, the doctor tells him, I hate to tell you, there was a big fire after the accident in the car. We got you guys out, and there was no ID. We didn't have a wallet of your name and identification. We don't even know who you are. He says, but you were right next to a bucket and a toolbox that had plumbing tools. And your friend who woke up had a box of electrical tools. So I don't know your name. I don't exactly know who you are, but you had plumbing tools, so I'm going to assume you're a plumber. And I'm going to assume you were an electrician. And this is the basis of us, because we were born into this world with certain things that we have and certain things that we don't have. And they were not your choice. And when we came into the world, God gave us a package. And he said, you have the ability to do and become great with the toolbox that I gave you. You're going to say, but I don't know who I am. I didn't identify myself. So before a person can become great, he first has to identify, who am I? What did God give me that was unique to me and not anyone else? Because every human being that was created, there's no two of us. And there will never be someone that will ever be similar to you again in history. And this is an important key part of how to become great in your own life. As a Jew, we know this, that every one of us has something that's unique that the other person doesn't have. And I don't know what every person has. At one time, we had prophets, Nevi'im, who were able to look at someone and say, oh, you know what you have this special trait. If you go live in this location and you go at this time, You're going to have a lot of success in whatever it is that you need to do. And part of our life is to discover who we are, what it is that we really have. Some people live their whole life, they never find it. They're too busy with so many other things of life, of day to day. They don't actually take the moment and the time to discover, who am I? What am I doing? You spend so much time, whether it's wasted on day-to-day activities or on frivolities, but we have to spend a moment of our life alone to kind of discover, why did God put me here? And if God put you here, what does he really want from you? And this is not a small question. It's something that each and every person has to do, because the greatness of mankind is tremendous, and God created everybody with a special trait. And I don't mean just like, you can do chesed. I'm talking about something much greater than that. He created in each and every one of us to have a strong ability. And when we have a Tzelem Elohim, we have the ability to create and to do things, and also, has v'shalom, a person can also destroy. There is, in the Kabbalah, they say that there's 4 olamot in the world. It's Rashi Tevot Abiyah. Abiyah is the first one, Atzilut, Beriah, Yitzira, and Asiyah. We are in the world of Asiyah. Asiyah, Asot, meaning we're in the world of doing. All the other worlds are different. If you look in the Tefillah, you'll notice that there's different parts in the Tefillah. It'll say Atzilut, Beriut, Yitzira, and then it'll say Asiyah. There's different parts of it. And we're in the world of Asiyah, of doing it. Now, we can't see really the effect of what we do in our life. For example, if we do a mitzvah, you don't really know that you don't really see the effect of a mitzvah. If a person does an averah, you don't see it. Sometimes you see people do averot. You don't see much. You see it doesn't do it. You don't feel it. And mitzvot is not a personal act. Sometimes people think mitzvot is only for you. Meaning, for example, you do mitzvah, God is one day going to tell you at the end of the year, okay, Hazaku Baruch, you did all these mitzvot, very good, it's only for you. No. We understand that Bnei Israel and Am Yisrael is a general cloud, that we're all interconnected, and that you can do something that could benefit me. The Gemara tells us, Torah is magnin matzleh. When you learn Torah, it protects everybody. But what do you mean? I thought I'm going to get rewarded. No. You learn Torah, you can protect other people too. That means your actions can actually affect other people. And that's why it says in the pasuk, Yaakov hevel nachalato, that Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov is us, Yisrael, hevel is a rope, nachalato is the portion. Like, for example, if someone's holding a rope and I shake the rope, the other guy on the other side who's holding it, he feels it. He feels the rope shaking. But if you're in a different room and the rope goes to the side and you still do it, he still feels it, but you don't see what's going on. Because when we do things, we actually there's an action and a reaction to everything that we do. Whether it's something as frivolous as just taking a walk or doing something simple, or even something great. Every single thing has an action and reaction in the world. One day we're going to truly understand what they are. Today we don't really know. We don't really see it. And, for example, when Neil Armstrong in 1969 went onto the moon, you saw that he was on the moon, and there were a few people in Houston talking with him, and suddenly they talk, and he's moving over there. They hear him, they see him moving, and that's the same thing like our actions. When we do something here, there's something else going on. It goes on in the Shamayim, it goes on in the world that we are, both global and in the cosmos. Everything that we do has an action and a reaction. We don't see it. So sometimes, a person does a mitzvah, but he talks in shul, it doesn't, I didn't see, nothing blew up, nothing happened. So he thinks it's, okay, nothing. But one day, God's going to show us exactly all of these things. And it says, Hayotzer yachad libam hamevin el kol ma'asehem. The pasuk says that God, the Creator, Hayotzer yachad libam. All of our hearts are one. Hamevin, he understands, el kol ma'asehem. Why the word el? Is that, when you say, Ani holech el hanut, I'm going to the store, which means that everything that we do has an action of going. God knows every action and reaction and the effect of what's happening. And God can trace the mitzvot of what we did. So one day, when God's going to rule us at the end of the year, or in the beginning of the year, Rosh Hashana, you think he's just going to rule you on just whatever the mitzvot are. He's not only going to rule you, he's going to rule you also on what effect you had with your mitzvot. Meaning, if you did a mitzvah, or you did a mitzvah that helped other people do mitzvot, you're going to get a reward and action for all of the stuff that are interconnected to it. when in the beginning in Bereshit, it says 4 different types of words, how God created mankind. It says, Na'aseh Adam, that he created Adam. Vayitzer Hashem Elohim et Adam, that God formed man. Vayitzer. And it says, Zachar u'nekeva bera'am. God also created in man and female bera'am. And Vayipach be'apav nishmat hayim. That when God finally took the golem of what he created, the mankind, he blew in him a energy that gave him life. You know, like if someone wants to blow a balloon, he blows the balloon. Now, when you tie the balloon, what's inside of the balloon?
Yeah.
It's the air of you. It's your air, your body is inside of the balloon. That means that each and every one of us has in us a little bit of that Elohim. God blew inside of us that little air, and we have it. And there's a time where after 120 years, God takes it back. The neshama that we have never gets destroyed. Only the goof. If a person takes care of his goof, then the neshama has more time to be here. That's why it's such an important thing for a person to maintain his body. Whether he eats properly, exercise properly, sleep properly, mental state, physical state, because then you allow your neshama to grow and become more. Now, and if you look at the word vayipach be'apav, vayipach is gimatria 104. What's 104? If you take the Yud K Vav K, which is Shem of Havaya, and you do times 4, 26 times 4, you get 104, which is Keneged the Abiyah. The Abiyah is the 4 words that we said. Atzilut, B'riyah, Yisirah, and Asiyah.
So that's why 4 times?
It's 4 times. Now, that's Vayipach. And when God blew inside of you, he gave you the ability to control 4 worlds, even though you tell me I'm only in this world. I don't feel like I'm doing anything in the other world. Now the Arizal says that a man can corrupt the world. How do we know that a man can corrupt the world? Because it says in the time of Noach, Ki hishchit kol basar et darko ala aretz, that it got to a point that even the animals were doing bad things. Meaning, in the time of Noach, men were going with men, women, they were switching animals, man was going with animal. It got so bad, Ki hishchit kol darko ala aretz. Everything on man, God said, I can't keep this around anymore. I have to start over. It got so bad. You know, there was a journal that they wrote in San Francisco, how they noticed that the pigeons in San Francisco had a decline in population. Pigeons, the birds. They said that they wanted to figure out why is the decline in population, and they found that the male pigeons were going with other male pigeons, and they were copying what they were seeing in San Francisco, all the tum'ah that was there. The animals were copying it, and it was affecting a decline in the birds. Now, this is not me. This was a scientific journal that Rabbi Mansour brought to us, and he showed to us.
Absolutely.
And you know, why was it unbelievable?
That's how San Francisco.
Because the animals they are affected by our actions. You know, and this is only on Earth. Now, I'm telling you also that you have actions that can affect things that you don't see that are above and beyond this. You know, you should never see yourself as like a little guy. You know, so Nefesh Hayim, the Nefesh Hayim says in the book, what do you think is a worse thing? You know, there was Titus. Titus was one of the Roman generals. He came into the Kodesh HaKodashim in the Beit HaMikdash. He took a Sefer Torah, he opened the Sefer Torah, he took a Zonah on the Sefer Torah, and he did the Avera on the Sefer Torah with the Zonah. So the Nefesh Hayim says, what's worse, what Titus did, or if a Jew thinks about doing a Avera, a bad thought? So you're going to tell me, what do you mean? Come on. What are you going to compare the two? You're going to compare a bad thought with that type of action? You're joking, right? No. He says the thought of a Jew has a bigger negative effect. We don't see it. We don't see this. Then you tell me, what about Titus? Because as a Jew, we have a higher level of understanding of what's going on. While there's, you know, Titus can be compared to like a cockroach. If a cockroach comes in the room, what do? You just you broom it out, you throw it out, you throw it in the garbage, finish it out. It doesn't have the effect like the way the action of a Jew can have. And you know, the word that the rabbi used when he gave over that this is a cataclysmic in the entire world. He used that nice word that we don't understand our effect truly in the world, which is why it's hard to convince people to do mitzvot sometimes. He tells you, I don't feel anything. I don't feel like I'm doing something. And it's a problem because you need to understand that everything you do has a really great measure in this world and in the three other worlds that you don't see that exist in the world. You know, there was a rabbi in the Gemara, he was one of the Tanaim, they called him Yonatan ben Uziel. If you go to his kever in Israel, in Amuka, he's buried over there. They wrote on top of it, Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel, but that's a yeah, but they say that, but there's no. I've never seen that in the books, and I love reading Sigulot. I never saw in the book anything that connects a Sigulat to that. But listen, praying at Kivrei Sadiqim is always beneficial, so you never lose out to pray. But if you look at the Kivrei, they wrote over there Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel. It's a mistake. The Gemara does not put the word Rabbi. His name was Yonatan ben Uziel. Why do I say that? Because there's a special level when you identify yourself with no titles. That's why Moshe was Moshe. Now we call Moshe Rabbeinu, but his name was just Moshe. That's the highest level. They had rabbis like Shemuel, Hillel. It's the highest level. You know, today they say Rav, Rabbi, Hagaon, Hagadol. I hate to say it, but that's a little bit, that decreases because the higher level you go, the less accolades. While amongst the secular world, the more Rashi Tevot they put after the word, after his name, that means he's better. PhD, BC, FC, LE. They put at the end. Rabbi. Or even Akiva. That's even the highest. And Yonatan ben Uziel was just, now why was he so high? What was his level? He used to learn so much that the Gemara tells us a little fact, like something so small about him, but we're going to break it apart. It says, Kol of sheparach me'al rosho miyad nisraf. He learned Torah with so much kavanah and pure thought that if a bird flew on top of him, it would automatically just roast and just fall to the ground and roast itself and die. You know, if you tell that to PETA, which is the animal rights activist, they wouldn't be so impressed that this rabbi could do that. But in reality, this rabbi had such gadlut in the Torah, focus. You know, I don't know if I've been to many rabbis in Eretz Yisrael. I should say many, a handful of rabbis. And when they look at you, you feel something. You know, something you feel, you get a little bit like shaky. He sends like almost a energy that you right away you feel, you get that little power. This Yonatan ben Uziel, when he would learn, the animals, the birds would automatically get roasted on top of him. That means his energy and fire and flame was going up. So let's look at a different way to understand what it is. It says, Kol of sheparach me'al rosho miyad nisraf. Right? So we know that there's different levels of malachim in the Shamayim. There's a malach, and then on top of it you have what's called seraphim, then you have ofanim, and you have different levels of malachim. So if you look and you see it, is that it says kol of. Now why of? A malach knows how to fly. So he was so great, Yonatan ben Uziel, that he can take a creature like a malach that is like an off fly, and he was able to make it to a seraphim. I told you have malachim seraphim. So now look again. Now understand it again. Take a look. Kol off sheparach me'al rosho. The off is like a malach that flies. Sheparach me'al rosho miyad nisraf. Right away, it became a saraf. He was, not that the bird burned. I'm showing you a different understanding. It's that he was so big that he took a malach that's like an off that flies, and his Torah was able to elevate the angels to seraphim. Now you tell me, okay, so what is that effect? What I'm showing you is that we have a higher level than the malachim. You know, people think malach is an angel. You say, no, he's a human being. Being a human being is on a greater level than even a malach, and you have to accept on yourself that each and every one of you have this power. Not to ever think, I'm a little guy. No, I'm tamim. I'm small. I'm regular. No. You each and every, God created you with special kochot and powers, and this is what we learn from Yonatan ben Uziel. You know, it says that when the malachim went to Sodom, the malachim came from the Shamayim. They came down to Lot, and they told Lot, Ki mashchitim anachnu et hamakom hazeh. We came down to destroy this whole area of Sodom. God doesn't like it anymore. He doesn't like what you guys are doing. We're destroying the whole area of Sodom. God said, what do you mean? Why did you say, Ki mashchitim anachnu? What do you mean, anachnu? What, you're going to do it or I'm going to do it? Who's destroying, me or you? God got upset at the Malachim. What happened? The Malachim, when they went to Sodom, they became arrogant. They were in an area that had so much arrogance. They said, Ki mashchitim anachnu. We're going to do it. God said, wait a minute, you or me? Oh, you're going to do it? Hashem punished them. He told them, you think you're going to do it? You have to stay down there for 138 years. They got punished that they had to stay down on earth because of the way they spoke. Now, why did this happen to them? Because the atmosphere that they were around had an effect on them. We should never underestimate the place. There was a ma'amar in the Gemara where they offered a rabbi tremendous amount of money to come live amongst a new city. And he said, no, I only live in a place that's a Makom Torah. What's a Makom Torah? Makom Torah is a place that you have a Beit Midrash, you have a shul, you have a mikveh for the men, mikveh for the ladies, you have infrastructure, a Beit Din, you have Rabbanim, you have religious Jews. You always want to put yourself in that atmosphere, and especially today. I don't know what 50 years ago was like, only what I read. But 50 years ago, if a person lived in the world, he was generally in the center. He was the world had a lot of morals in and of itself. Today, and I tell this to my friends all the time that I went to school with in Brooklyn, I tell them all the time that you want you and your family to be all the way on the right. Of course, we dress normal, we act normal, we want to be on the right. Because the world in and of itself is going to push everyone back to the other side. Just by living in the world and in commerce and business and meeting people on a daily basis, it pushes. So you always want to push to the right because the world by itself is going to push you towards the center, just to be normal. If your mission is to be in the center, they end up on the left side all the way, and they end up falling, chas v'shalom. So you always want to say, I want to always, and if a person even is not at the level, say, I'm not a rabbi, I'm not this. It's okay. Just identify yourself in the right place. I hold like that. I'm not there yet, maybe, but I hold. This is what I believe in. This is what is true and right. Not to change, chas v'shalom, the philosophy of it. And this shows you how even the malachim, even angels, could be negatively affected by the surroundings that you're in. At the same time, a person can be also positively affected by the surroundings that he's around. That's why if you notice when Yaakov Avinu went to sleep that night in Bet El, if you notice it says, V'hineh malachei Elohim olim v'yoredim bo. What do you mean olim v'yoredim bo? When did he sleep, Yaakov, that night? It was after 138 years, and the malachim were still down on earth. So usually malachim don't ole and then yored. They come from up to down. But here they were already down on earth. So it says, malachim Elohim olim veyoredim bo. Why olim first? Because they were still down here. They got punished. First they had to go up, and then they were able to come down. Because normally a malach comes from down and then back up.
So
Yeah.
the angels got stuck in.
They got stuck, and if you look at the Midrash, they said, where did they go live? They went to go live by Abraham Avinu. So when they lived by Abraham Avinu, there's a little ma'amar I found in one of the books when Eliezer, the Eved Abraham, he told them, I want you to go get for my son Yitzhak, go find him a wife. He says, you want me to go to Aram Naharaim, to Betuel? This guy is a gangster. Betuel was the head of the mafia over there. He said, you want me to go speak to him? He said, you got to send me someone. He says, listen, I have 2 malachim here. You can take them with you. He took the malachim with him. And if you look at the ma'amar and some of them in Farshim, it shows you that the malachim identified the plate, which one had the poison in it, so he could switch it. The malachim gave him a lot of insight. Said, yeah, this guy stay away, this one do this. And it was very funny. Now, how did he have malachim there? Because he had malachim because they got stuck. So they went to go live by Abraham. Who are they going to live by? They're not going to go live by Lot.
How is that connected?
Yeah, they're all interconnected. That's why, I would tell people, if they learned Torah in the past and it was not interesting or enjoyable, change the teacher. Look, find a different book, because there's so much enjoyment and depth in understanding even the stories. We learned the stories. This is from Rabbi Mansour. Yeah. But
the source in Yaakov?
Yeah, the En Yaakov. This is the En Yaakov. Yes. And what's interesting, even more, is that we learn the stories. Sometimes you learn the stories when you're in it's first grade, second grade, third grade. You learned it, and you think, I know the story. I heard it already. But every year that you learn the stories, you got to go back and say, is there something new I didn't know? I had a rabbi from Israel, from BMT, and he came to New York for a short time, and he had a trait, something very nice. He told me, I was like maybe 13 or 14 years old, Rabbi Mirsky, and he said something so nice. He said every year take a different mifaresh. This year, Rashi, the whole year. We're going to start the Torah now. Bereshit, read Rashi. Next year, read the Ramban The third year, read the Ora Hayim. The fourth year, read the Sforno. Then you read the next one. You go down the Tan Ben Uziel, the Targum, and then after 5, 7, 10 years, you covered all the different mefarshim, and you expanded your mind. Because a lot of times the guy who reads Chumash Rashi, and he doesn't. You have to now. When you learn the other mefarshim, you're going to understand the Rashi better. You're going to understand because they're all interconnected. You'll get them on a much higher level. In Masechet Berachot, it says, "Kol hanehene min haolam hazeh belo beracha gozel mehakadosh baruch hu mekeneset Yisrael." It says in Masechet Berachot that if someone eats something and he doesn't say beracha on it, he steals from God. But what the Gemara tells us, he steals from God. Gozel mehakadosh baruch hu umekeneset Yisrael. He also steals from all of Knesset Yisrael. But what do you mean? If you go to the store and you buy a pizza and you don't say a beracha, why did you steal from me anything? You didn't steal from me.
The energy of all Israel.
You stole from God the beracha, but you stole the energy. You stole the ability to send blessing to all Israel. And Rashi tells us over there, what does he say? He says that if you don't say a beracha, you prevent the crop from growing
but
to
it's Kiddush Hashem. Everything, the topic is Kiddush Hashem, because when you do Kiddush Hashem, you represent everyone.
Yeah, but it's more than Kiddush. Kiddush Hashem means exalting His name. This is, I'm telling you.
No, but as a Jew, you have to do Kiddush Hashem, meaning you represent Hashem in all your BA.
Yes.
You represent the whole Jewish people.
Yeah, but here he's telling you that your actions have an effect on the crop. Meaning if you... Yeah, for sure. Beracha Acharona brings Ashirut. You want to be rich? So say Beracha Acharona, Birkat HaMazon. It brings a lot of wealth to a person. And it says Devarim shebirumo sha'olam u'bnei adam mezalzelim b'hem. It's a very holy thing that people do. So when a person doesn't say Beracha, you don't only steal from God the Beracha. You stole from me the ability to enjoy, because maybe the crops are going to be negatively affected by not saying the Beracha on it. Now, why is that? Because you have an action and a reaction that can be affect me in my life. And let's continue. It says, Ki hineh yotzir harim uborei ruach umagil la'adam masicho. That at the end of life, God's going to tell over to mankind all of the conversations that he had and all the chats that he had are going to be scrutinized. God's going to go through every single thing that you did on your daily life, and he's going to scrutinize and tell you what's important. And not only that, he's going to tell you what your conversation had an effect. See, right? He's going to tell you, oh, you know what, Shami, you know when you had that conversation that night over there, you were talking about sports? Yeah, well, what's the big deal I spoke about? He said, okay, because you spoke about the sports, you had a negative effect on a Jew living in Bnei Brak, that he got sick, lo aleinu, from that. You tell me, oh, what, me? What? He says, yeah. Now you think, you thought that when you talk it's all free? You had an effect, but God's going to show you when you're going to see it. You're going to, it's kind of like, the best way I can tell you is like, if it's cold outside and you take a picture, can you identify the temperature from the picture? No. It's like wind. Wind has a lot of power, but you don't see wind. When you see tornado, you're not seeing the wind, you're seeing the dirt.
The funnel.
But see, a mountain you can identify the mountain. You see the mountain, it has an actual structure, the mountain. Or you see the ocean, but when a wind, you don't see it. When the person talks, the wind that comes out of his mouth has an effect. You don't always see it, but it's there. Rabbi Eliyahu Lopian says on the pasuk, "Hine yotzir harim uborei ruach umagil adam masicho," that everything that a person does is going to be recorded, because everyone can see the mountain, but they cannot see wind. But God's going to identify at the end of our life what our words actually did in the world, all the positive, and if we spoke the wrong things, the negative things. And so, we're going to end with this point. What the Chachamim are teaching here, especially with this En Yaakov, is that we're about to go into Rosh Hashana. You might assume that we're only going to be judged on our deeds, because Rosh Hashana is Yom HaDin. But what the real effect of Rosh Hashana is, most of our effect is what we speak about, which is why we're going to take a shofar, and the same way God blew into us, we're going to blow into the shofar to the air. And, there's a custom that some people do on Rosh Hashanah or on Yom Kippur. They do Ta'anit Dibur. They don't talk. Why do Ta'anit Dibur? Because the whole year we spoke improperly. So we take an extra time not to talk in shul, not to talk any lashon hara, not to talk anything devarim betelim, because these things have an effect. You know, there was a doctor. We'll end with this. Dr. Joseph Murphy. I just finished reading his book. He has a book. He was a Catholic, but he was like a religious pastor. But he truly believed that when you speak, you have a positive effect. You ever wonder how the people that speak negatively all the time, they have negative lives? You know, the guy always says he doesn't have money, he never has money. Or the guy says he never can find anything, he never finds anything. While the guy who talks positive, even if there's an up and down, he always goes back up.
No, but a lot of time if you talk about yourself positive as well, it's not good.
No, it is good.
You don't supposed to talk at all.
No, so what he says, Dr. Joseph Murphy, and he has a book that talks about how to control your subconscious mind, is that he says they're called affirmations. He says that if a person talks positive, not to tell people what you're doing, he talked about yourself. He talks about talking in privately, not even in front of people. But you have to talk to yourself and say what you are. I am successful. I am this. I'm that.
I can do it.
And by doing that, you're creating the words. You know, let's say you want to be a successful contractor. You wake up in the morning and you say privately, I'm a successful contractor. And even if something goes the wrong way, doesn't matter. God does everything that's good. I'm successful. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to do it. You know, I remember I had a property that I bought in Brooklyn, and it was completely dilapidated, the property. We bought it for cheap, and I had to sell it. And I was showing it to people. It was like in a prime location, but the house was completely garbage. It was all like damage. It had water damage. And I kept on telling the investors, we're going to sell this property for this price, and we're going to sell it in a month. I'm telling you, we're selling this property. And I had many buyers come in. One buyer told me, I'll give you half. Like, she was making fun of me. I remember she walked in very nicely dressed, nice car. I'll give you half, like it's nothing. I said, I'm going to sell this for this price. If you don't want it, it's no problem, but I'm going to sell it. And I kept on saying it over, and within a week, I got the buyer. He bought it, all cash. We finished the deal, and it was successful. But what it taught me is that if you talk positively, even if you sometimes doubt yourself, continue to talk positively. It's going to come into your life. You say you're a good Hazan. I'm a successful Hazan, and I'm going to do better. And by the way, you know, I can tell you, failure is a part of success. A person who doesn't fail is not trying in life. You know, it's very easy to go in the corner, just leave yourself alone, don't push yourself to the limit, but that's not God-like. God-like is you have to be like God. God creates, and God does more and works, and He does more. And this is important. So if there's one thing we're going to take from the class today, is we're going to Rosh Hashana, we're being judged also on how we speak. That's why Lashon Hara is such a big effect. But we also have to also think the times that we spoke things that were foolish, they have a negative effect. So we want to talk less Rosh Hashana. Now the 10 days, Aseret Yemei Teshuvah, speak less. Less talk on the phone. Less texting. I know texting is not talking. I know it's not talking, but it may lead to it.
It conveys the same.
The conversation, and by talking less, we become more conscious. You know, if you ever look, the way the Hachamim say, "Siag la chokhmah shtika."
You bring the point. You're saying that speaking creates action that we cannot see. What about texting? As you convey to the person the same message, it creates the same negative energy as you're speaking, but would it be the same effect in the other?
So very good. Remember the example I gave you from Rav Chaim Volozhin about titus and a negative thought? When you get a text message, can you read it without thinking?
No.
So it could be a positive and negative thought. And sometimes the negative thought could be worse than speaking. You know why? Because sometimes it comes with a visual. And the visual, along with the words, can be much more helpful. You know, the Goyim, they say sticks and stones can break bones, but words never hurt. Sheker kazab. Words hurt, and words have an effect. Don't ever think for a minute they don't have an effect. But you have the ability to block it. You know, I've had people that called, like they would say sometimes that you're a failure. I'll tell them, no, I'm not. I block it. I stop it in its track. No, I'm successful. I'm going to do it. I'm going to work harder. And you push it back because you have the ability. He wants to do negative, push back the positive. Say no. Say lo alenu. Say has v'shalom. You push it back. Or if he says something good, what do you say? Say amen. Amen. He creates. Now we spoke about the amen in the Perez Minyan before. We may go in the future connecting how the amen brings down a lot of beracha from poteach et yadecha, the different numbers, and we connected it. We'll talk about that in the future, God willing. So this is the key. We're going to Rosh Hashana. Let's think about how we speak. And also, the shofar blowing that God blew into us by Yipach Ba'apav. When did He blow? He blew in Rosh Hashana. He gave us that soul, that words. And I think if we're careful in Rosh Hashana, and you don't talk as much, it'll be positive. I know people like to have the custom of Tani Dibur if they go to eat by their mother on the holiday. But listen, even if you're going to be home, even if you're going to be home for the holiday, even if you're going to be home or not, it's worth it to talk less. Double mitzvah. But in the shul, for sure, on Rosh Hashanah, don't say a word. If a guy tells you what page, don't answer him. Just show him the number. No talking in shul on Rosh Hashanah at all. Zero. It's talking in shul is like a guy. Imagine if a guy were to come.
What I say, how are you?
No, not during tefillah. Not in the tefillah. What does tefillah mean? From the time the hazan goes up until Aleinu L'Shabeach, that's tefillah.
From Hodu?
From the time there's a hazan. The moment you hear somebody start the tefillah, that's the beginning of tefillah. Until the Aleinu, no talking of any kind. None. And by the way, control yourself. It's just a few minutes. What the example is of someone talking in shul? Imagine if a stranger walked in the door now, Uri. He comes in, he takes a cigarette and starts lighting a cigarette and smoking, and he's blowing in the air all the smoke. You tell him, what are you doing here? You're going to tell him, you're going to say, he's like, no, I'm smoking. It's not a big deal. It's the same thing. Talking in the shul is like putting a bad smell all around. You don't see it because we don't see the effect. But the Tosfot Yom Tov, the Tosfot Yom Tov, Rav Yom Tov Lipman Heller, there was 2 years, Tach V'Tat, where the Ukrainian Cossacks were killing the Jews, and they were killing them in the hundreds of thousands using all these type of weapons. I recently researched the Cossacks, and I invite everyone to read about how they were, because there are photos of them from the 1800s, the late 1800s. You can see how they dressed with their weapons. Scary. They would shave their heads and put like a ponytail. It's really scary. They would go in, they would murder the Jews, they would rape them, they would do very, very bad things. And they asked the Tosfot Yom Tov, why did this all happen? They said, what did we do wrong? That could have been, and he said, I don't know specifically. He goes, but I believe it's tied to the fact that they spoke so much in shul, they gave power and energy to the Satan to be able to do this. And Sfaradim, we always were very careful in the shul that we always had respect. We always had a lot of respect for the rabbis, we have a lot of respect for the shul, and I'm sure it exists amongst all the klalim, Ashkenazim, and Hasidim, and Temanim, and all over. But this is something that we're going to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, talk less. You always gain more by talking less. Abraham Lincoln famously said, I never regretted something I didn't say. He was the president. He said, I never regretted it, I didn't say. And a lot of times when I'm mad, I have a lot to say. But I learned because I always want to respond. And I learned over the years that if you talk less, you're always going to gain. And I know that a person could be upset. And by the way, even if you're right. I'm not talking about if you're wrong. If you're wrong, you don't have to answer. You know you're wrong. I'm talking about when you're right. That's why it says that always be from the person that they made fun of, not the one who's making fun of. They're using your mouth to make fun. Accept it and do it. And I think if we go into the holiday with this, talking less, being more conscious that what we speak has a real power, then we'll be much more successful in our life. Because it's not only the actions. You might think only I put tefillin. No, also the way you talk. That has a big effect in life. Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom.